brand new episode of Brewing with 50 Bucks. My name is Stefan. I'm coming to you from the General Warfare headquarters. Now, over the last week, we've noticed that there's a few spoilers that have been coming out from the new crossover set, I should say, of Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons called Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So we've seen a couple of spoilers, and for today's brew, this is a brand new commander that's just been released, I should say. And there is no set price on the commander just yet. The retail price as it stands right now is looking around $8, but nonetheless, this is our brew for this week. Since this is a brand new commander, this is the very first time I'm actually brewing a recently spoiled commander. So let's get started. Our commander for this week is Tiamat. It's another 5-color dragon general. We've seen this before with Scion of the Ur-Dragon and the Ur-Dragon themselves, and this is a dragon god, believe it or not. And we are going to get right into it. Let's break down Tiamat for you right now. So Tiamat is a 7/7 for 2 and Wooburg. 2 white, blue, black, red, and green for a legendary dragon god with flying. And when Tiamat enters the battlefield, if you cast it, search your library for up to 5 dragon cards not named Tiamat that each have different names, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. So Tiamat effectively works as a tutor to get 5 other dragons you need, and itself is a 7/7 body with flying. That's a bit of a high casting cost, being it at 7 mana, but there are always ways to get Tiamat out on the field, and we're going to be breaking it down in this video. Now, as always with these challenges, we have a $50 budget with these decks, which exclude the basic land count, include the commander price. In this instance, we're labeling Tiamat at around $8. And there is some wiggle room with $5 going over budget, since most people can afford an extra $5 to the deck, up to $5 to the deck. Now, we have 8 categories going into this deck, and we're gonna get started with the dragons in this deck. Namely, this commander really relies on its dragons, and we're gonna go through all 15 of them right now, starting with Amareth the Lustrous for 6/6/3 and Bant, so 3 green, white, and blue for flying dragon. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it shares a card type with that permanent, you may reveal that card and put it into your hand. So this is effectively a good little engine to get more dragons into your hand and to know what's on the top of your deck. Not only are you keeping it secretive from your opponents, but you're always seeing the top card of your deck. That way you know what is coming up for your next draws. Next, we're running Atarka World Render. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gains double strike till end of turn. So with this, it's every dragon you control. So anytime Tiamat swings, that's at least 14 damage in the air going at an opponent. In 2 swings, that opponent is dead if they're not blocking. And with that, each other dragon, so even Atarka itself has double strike. Next, we're running Chromium the Mutable. For a 7/7 flash, it can't be countered, it has flying, and you discard a card until end of turn. Chromium the Mutable becomes a human with base power and toughness 1/1, loses all abilities, and gains hexproof. It can't be blocked this turn. So Chromium is an effectively good little commander. I've seen one of my friends build this deck not too long ago. However, this is also a fun little dragon to add to the count, especially when you want more dragons to flood the field and populate your side of the board. So the next card we're going to be talking about is Dragon Tyrant. It is a flying, trample, and double strike creature for 10 power. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice Dragon Tyrant on you, plus you pay 4 red, and Dragon gets +1/+0 till end of turn for 1 red mana. Now, this is a scary card, not only because it is, well, a very high costed thing, and the fact that you have to sacrifice it on your next upkeep unless you pay 4 red mana. It's a lot. However, flying, trample, and double strike are very key abilities with this card. Flying gets you around evasion, gives you your evasion trample, you get to get some extra damage in, and double strike is just extra damage on the board against your opponents, whittling down their life and giving you that closure you need to get in for that game-winning victory. Next, we're running Flame Blast Dragon. This is a 6 mana, 5/5 flying. Whenever Flame Blast Dragon attacks, You may pay X in red. If you do, Flame Blast Dragon deals X damage to any target. Now with this, it's effectively Fireball on a dragon, but with this, whenever it attacks, so it doesn't actually have to deal damage, you can attack and then Fireball somebody in the face till death. We've seen this happen before on General Warfare, link in the top right of your screen right now. And basically, this is also a fun little way to end a game. If it's just 1v1 and you just want to burn someone out for the rest of their life, and yeah, that's how it works. Next, we're running Immersun Predator. It's a 4-mana 3/3 with flying. With Winter Storm, Predator becomes tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard and put a +1/+1 counter on it. You sacrifice another creature. Immersun Predator gains indestructible till end of turn, you tap it. So effectively, you give this creature indestructible if you ever need to. If it's being targeted for a removal spell, you get to sacrifice another creature, make it indestructible, but the other ability is exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard whenever it becomes tapped. So anytime you tap Immerstorm Predator, you basically get to exile any kind of card from any graveyard. If you're going up against a deck that very heavily relies on their graveyard, this is a powerful way to completely nullify any kind of advantage your opponents will get from it. Next, we're running Karthus, Tyrant of Jund. It's a 7/7 for 7 mana. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of all dragons, then untap them, and other dragon creatures you control have haste. This is one of our haste enablers in the deck, and Karthus itself is a 7/7. Giving all your dragons haste is very scary, especially whenever you're playing Tiamat. Tiamat wants to come in and swing. Plus, with Karthus on the field and Tiamat, that's 14 damage on the field. Giving Tiamat haste and swing with both Karthus and Tiamat is just insane. Karthus. Next, we're running Kolaghan, the Storm's Fury. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, creatures you control gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Now, it's whenever a dragon attacks. So if you have more than one attacking, it's +X/+0, where X is the number of dragons that are attacking. So if you have Tiamat on the field, if you have Flame Blast Dragon, if you have Immerstorm, and you have Kolaghan on the field, all of them attacking, that is +4/+0 to each one of those dragons. Next, we're running Lathliss, Dragon Queen. Whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield you control, you create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. And for 1 in red, dragons you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So, effectively, anytime you play a dragon from your hand, or whenever it enters the battlefield, you create a 5/5 red dragon. You have more dragons on the field, and especially with our last card we talked about, with Kolaghan, every dragon will, with Karthus, every dragon will have haste, and Kolaghan, whenever a dragon attacks, each one of those dragons gets a +1 boost. Next, we're running Molten Steel Dragon. This is a fun little combo with Scion of the Dragon. It's a card we are going to be talking about in a very short little bit. This is a 4 mana with 2 Phyrexian mana dragon with a 4/4 with flying, and Phyrexian mana, Molten Steel gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So effectively with this, you can play Molten Steel Dragon on your 3rd or 4th turn, depending on how fast you've ramped out. Get it out, you have a 4/4 on the field with flying, and you can pay however much life you want to give it a boost. Now, the next card we're going to be talking about is Ojutai, Soul of Winter. A flying vigilance 5/6, and whenever a dragon you control attacks, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. That permanent doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Now, again, the same thing with Kolaghan. It's whenever a dragon attacks. So, however many dragons you are attacking, you can tap that many non-land permanents. And each one of those don't untap on their control's next untap step. So if you can effectively lock out an opponent from attacking or even playing some of their big spells that require extra mana to cast them. Next is Scion of the Dragon. So as I mentioned before with Molten Steel, there is a fun little combo in this deck. I currently run a Scion of the Dragon EDH deck. You've seen the deck on previous iterations of General Warfare. However, with this, the combo is you pay 4 mana, you have 2 triggers with the Scion's ability, you get to search for 2 dragons, put them into the graveyard, and each one of them becomes a copy. You stack the triggers first to where Scion becomes a Molten Steel Dragon. You get to pay any number of life to give it plus 7. I believe it's 14 life you have to give to play to get it +7/+0, making it 11/4, and then you basically get the second trigger to make it a creature either with double strike or with haste and double strike. Most of the time you're gonna be going with Dragon Tyrant or a Tarka, and you swing in with a 22 power Scion of the Dragon, killing them. With this deck, Scion just becomes any kind of dragon, get to fetch it out and put it into your graveyard, and you basically get to have that creature on the field for a turn. Next we're running Silumgar, the Drifting Death. For a 3/7 flying hexproof, whenever a dragon you control attacks, creatures defending player controls gets -1/-1 till end of turn. Again, same thing with Kolaghan, same thing with Ojutai. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, creatures defending player controls gets -1/-1 till end of turn for each dragon that attacks. So each one of these stacks, and if you're swinging with 8 dragons, each creature that a defending player gets -8/-8 till end of turn. Effectively, -8, you're basically wiping away an entire board. And with Silumgar on the field, with that hexproof ability, your opponents can't target him. Next we're running Steel Hellkite. Now, this is just a card I feel that has been forgotten alongside a lot of other cards, but Steel Hellkite I still find is a really fun little filler spot in each deck. For a 5/5 flying dragon, Artifact Dragon, 2 Steel Hellkite gets +1/+1 till end of turn, +1/+0 till end of turn, I should say. And for X, destroy each non-land permanent with mana value X whose controller was dealt combat damage by Steel Hellkite this turn, activated only once each turn. So, Steel Hellkite, whenever he deals damage to an opponent, you get to pay X and destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X. It's not X or lower, and it's not X or greater, it's converted mana cost X, so you have to be precise in what you're wanting to get rid of on your opponent's side of the field. And lastly, we're running Tiamat the Harvester. This is another dragon commander I've run on the channel, and even last week I've mentioned it in my previous video. So this is another dragon commander I currently run, this one as an Enchantress deck. However, that's not what we're talking about in this brew. Tiamat is here to get all your dragons you put in the graveyard back from the graveyard. Not only that, you get to put target creature from a graveyard. It's not limited to just your graveyard, it's everybody's graveyard. So if you see something you want in an opponent's graveyard, you just deal damage with Tiamat, pay that 2 and a black, and you put that creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield on your control. Next, we're running our utility cards. With this, we want a lot of value, and so this is how we're gonna get it. We have 8 utility cards, starting with Binding the Old Gods. So this is the only Saga card we're running in this deck, but it has multiple uses. The first of which is you get to destroy a target non-land permanent an opponent controls. Always start off with a bang, especially when you're playing something with a very higher cost and has multiple effects. The second one is your Suture Library for a forest card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Not only is it removal, it's also ramp. And the third one is creatures you control gain death touch till end of turn. So anytime your opponents try to block your creatures, anytime they block them, basically they die. Next we're running Dragon Tempest. With this, whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, it gains haste till end of turn. And whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. Now, this paired up with Lathless, anytime a dragon comes into play, is incredibly strong. Dragon Tempest reads whenever a dragon enters the battlefield, so it's not limited to token or non-token dragons. So you basically play a dragon, Lathless will trigger, Dragon Tempest will trigger twice, one for the dragon that was cast and one for the dragon token that Lathless makes. So you're basically getting 2 triggers from Dragon Tempest, one being a 1x set of damage, and the other one being another X set of damage +1 from the other dragon coming into play. And the cast dragon will get haste. So anytime you're casting a dragon, it'll get haste, you're dealing damage to your opponent or your opponent's creature, and you get to swing in on that turn. Next, we're running Molten Echoes. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, aka dragons. Whenever a non-token creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. That token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. For the most part of this card, a lot of our creatures are legendary creatures. The only exceptions to this rule are Dragon Tyrant, Flame Blast Dragon, Immersturm Predator, Molten Steel Dragon, and Steel Hellkite. Those are the only exceptions to Molten Echoes. The others are basically just, you play them, you get a copy, you get rid of the copy because of the legendary rule, unless you're playing cards where the legendary rule does not apply. But Molten Echoes, for the most part, is a very strong card, especially getting 2 Dragon Tyrants on the field with haste. Very scary stuff. That is 24 damage on board, especially if it has haste. Next, we're running Monastery Siege. With this siege, you have to choose either at the beginning of your draw step to draw an additional card and discard one, or your spells your opponents cast that target you or a permanent you control cost 2 more to cast. So you either get to draw an extra card or you get some added protection. Most of the time, I run this card in my Scion of the Ur-Dragon deck, and for the most part, I choose Dragon. To have that ability to basically tax your opponents to ever target your stuff, not only is good for your end, but for the fact that they're expending more mana than they need to just to get rid of stuff on your side of the field, it's much more in your favor to have the taxing ability, in my personal opinion, rather than the additional card draw. Next, we're running Sarkhan's Unsealing. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 4, 5, or 6, Sarkhan's Unsealing deals 4 damage to any target. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 7 or greater, Sarkhan's Unsealing deals 4 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. Picture you have this on the field and you play Tiamat. Tiamat is a 7 power creature. So anytime you're playing this, if you play Karthus, which is 7 power, or if you're playing Chromia, which has 7 power, each one of those will trigger the Sarkhan's Unsealing second ability, dealing 4 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. However, other than that, the rest of your dragons, minus Immersturm Dragon and Silumgar, the Drifting Death, will basically trigger the Sarkhan's Unsealing, dealing 4 damage to any target of your choice. Next, we're running Sunbird's Invocation. This is powerful utility. Whenever you're casting one of your dragon spells from your hand, keep that in mind. So anytime you're playing Tiamat, this will not trigger Sunbirds. But whenever you play a spell from your hand, in general, you get to reveal the top X cards of your library, where X of the spell's mana value, and you can cast a spell with that mana value or less from among them and put the rest in the bottom of your library. You play a big spell, let's just say Karthus, you get to look at the top 7 cards. You reveal the top 7 cards, you play something for 7 mana or less. And for the most part, we curve out mostly at 4 mana value. So a lot of the times, if you're playing any card from your hand with 7 mana value, you're mostly gonna get anything. And if you play Dragon Tyrant from your hand, that's 10 mana. You get to look at the top 10 cards of your library, and you basically get to play any spell from your deck for free. Next, we're running Temur Ascendancy. This is another haste ability that we have for our dragons, and whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. So this is a double whammy. Not only are you giving haste to your creatures, but you get to draw a card for any one of those dragons with power 4 or greater that enter the battlefield. And lastly, we're running Warstorm Surge. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. This is not limited to cast from your hand. Even if you play Tiamat, set 7 damage on to any target. Whenever a creature just enters the battlefield under your control, not limited to token or non-token, it's X damage to any target. So even with Lathless getting the extra dragon tokens on the field, that's an extra 5 damage going to somebody's face or somebody's creature's face. Now, we are going to look at our removal spells. We have 9 removal spells. Let's get straight into it with Barrier Breach. For 3 mana, you get to exile up to 3 target enchantments, and with cycling 2. So if you haven't seen my videos before, go check them out. You know why I like cycling. I'm not gonna go over it again. But for this one, you get to exile up to 3 target enchantments. It's not 3 enchantments set, it's up to, which gives you some flexibility, especially if you're just trying to get rid of 1. Even 3 mana for 1 enchantment is not the worst in the world. Next, we're running Beast Within. It's a green staple card. I'm not going to be making more mention than I need to on this card. You get to destroy your target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. Next, we're running Crib Swap. So this is a tribal instant for shapeshifters, and you get to exile a target creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter with Changeling. Effectively, you're exiling somebody's big scary creature. They don't get to unless it's one of their commanders, they don't get it back. Next, we're running Despark. You know this card at this point if you've seen my videos. If not, please go check my Brewing for 50 bucks episodes. You'll know why I love Despark. Exile target permanent with mana value 4 or greater. Next, we're running Mortify and Putrefy. You know already how many times I put these cards in the deck, so it should come to no surprise. You get to destroy a creature or an artifact or an enchantment, depending on which version you're casting. And we're running Nature's Claim. You get to destroy target artifact or enchantment its controller gains 4 life. Rip Apart is a newer card, which I kind of like. Even though it is sorcery speed, you either get to deal 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or you get to destroy a target artifact or enchantment. I do really think Strixhaven did a lot really well, especially for the Boros clan. I personally think the most help that the set gave to was Boros. Now, Rip Apart itself is really good, especially destroying an artifact or an enchantment. It's part of the removal clan for that, and the fact that it deals an extra 3 damage to a creature or player really hits it home, especially if you're getting rid of a creature with a 3 toughness. And lastly, we're running Utter End. You get to exile target non-land permanent for 2 and a white and a black. Next, we're running our 5 draw abilities in the deck. We're going to start off strong with Colossal Majesty. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card. Every upkeep, you get an extra card draw, and especially so, this is like a budget version of Sylvan Library, even though I don't add it because we are running with a $50 budget, and that is much more expensive than $50. Colossal Majesty is helpful to get that extra card each turn. Next, we're running Elemental Bond. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. The vast majority of creatures that we run in this deck is 3 power or greater. Apart from a couple of creatures that we'll be talking about later on in the video, Elemental Bond is going to be working for you in that regard. Next, we are running Garruk's Uprising. Whenever it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card. Creatures you control have Trample, and whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. I was debating putting this into the utility side of things, considering how much it gives, but the fact the majority of this card reads draw a card, it had to be slated into the card draw set. Next, we're running Growth Spiral. You get to draw a card and put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Just an extra card draw, extra land drop, pretty solid stuff. And last, we're running Return of the Wild Speaker. Now, you get to draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. Now, pair this right with the combo I mentioned with Scion and Molten Steel. You get to draw an astronomical amount of cards, especially with Return of the Wild Speaker. Depending on how big that creature is, you're drawing at least 7-8 cards. You're getting a base of practically a new hand with this card. And the fact non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn, that's a good way to close out the game as well. Most of the time you're going to be doing that card draw ability, but it's also good to have a game-ending ability on this card as well. Next, we're going to be getting into our tutors. We're running 4 tutors, and we're starting off with Diabolic Tutor, the staple card in budget for tutoring. Now you get to search up your library for a card and put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library for 2 black. It is a staple in budget black decks, especially so if you've seen the brews I've been making regarding black decks. Even like 2 weeks ago, running Shadrick Silverquill, Diabolic Tutor did make its way into that deck tech. Next, we're running Sarkhan's Triumph. You get to search your library for a dragon creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This way you get to pick whatever dragon you want to come out on the field. Next, we're running Signal the Clans. You get to search your library for 3 creature cards and reveal them. If you reveal 3 cards with different names in Commander, that is going to happen. You get to choose one of them at random and put that card into your hand, shuffle the rest into your library. You're basically gambling on whatever creature you're getting into your hand. You get to choose 3, but you only put 1 in your hand and shuffle the rest in your library. And last is a conspicuous card in this deck, but I personally think this would work well, especially with Tiamat. It's Sisay, Weatherlight Captain. it gets +1/+1 for each color among other legendary permanents you control. Especially with Tiamat, Sisay is going to get at least a +5 easily. And the second ability, for Wooburg, you search your library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, put that card into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So a lot of our creatures do have converted mana cost less than 7. The only exceptions to this are Ojutai, Karthus, Dragon Tyrant, and Chromium, and Atarka. Those are the only exceptions to this, but for the most part, just say you're getting to put a legendary permanent onto the battlefield. And a lot of our creatures are legendary, I should say. You're going to be putting those cards right into play immediately. And now we're going to be going over some extra cards. These I do have separately put. However, I'm going to be going quickly through each one of them. So for our fast cast creatures, we're running Orcish Lumberjack, where you sacrifice a forest when you tap him and add 3 mana of either red or green to your mana pool for any combination of red or green to your mana pool. This way you get to put out Tiamat very quickly at the expense of a forest. And yeah, a majority of the basic lands we have are forests, so for the most part, these forests are expendable and you get to add 2 extra mana on top of it. Next, we're running Simian Spirit Guide. You get to exile it from your hand to add 1 red mana. So if you're missing 1 red mana to cast one of your bigger spells, you get to exile Simian Spirit Guide to cast that spell. And Tinderwall is the last card on our fast cast cards. You get to sacrifice it to add 2 red mana to your mana pool, or you get to tap a red and sacrifice Tinderwall to deal 2 damage to target creature it's blocking. Tinderwall, mostly going to be sacrificing it for that 2 extra red mana to pay for Tiamat or for any other creature that requires the 2 red mana. Next, we're going to be going over our recursion cards, starting off with Haunting Voyage. You get to choose a creature type, and you get to return up to 2 creature cards with that type from your graveyard to the battlefield. If it was foretold, you return all creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield instead. So if you foretell this card, you're getting every single dragon from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you don't, you get to choose 2. It's still really good getting 2 dragons over none. Nonetheless, depending how you play this card, it's still getting a lot of dragons on the board. And we're also running Primeval's Glorious Rebirth, where you get to return all legendary permanent cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. And again, the majority of our creatures are legendary creatures, save Steel Hellkite, save Molten Steel Dragon, and Embersturm Predator, and Fireblast Dragon, and Dragon Tyrant. Apart from those, the majority of your creatures are legendary, and you're going to be getting them back on the field. Our no-cast cards, starting off with Atla Palani Nest Tender. You get to create a 0/1 egg creature with Defender for 2 mana and tap it. And whenever an egg you control dies, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Now, normally, Atla Palani decks, you want sacrifice outlets, but if you're running Atla and you need some defenses, you at least have some defensive creatures that will die. You get your dragons on the field, or you have a little wall for your opponents to not attack you with because they don't know what's going to be coming off the top of the deck. And we're also running Neoform. At the additional cost to the Simic that you pay, you get to sacrifice a creature, and you search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card into the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and shuffle your library. So if you're sacrificing a creature that has converted mana cost 6, you're getting something with converted mana cost 7. We're also running Fires of Yavimaya. Creatures you control have haste, and sacrifice Fires of Yavimaya. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. With this is an extra haste ability. We've already discussed how good haste is already in this video. I'm not going to spend too much time on this card. It's still really good having all your creatures have haste. We are also running Dragonlord Servant. This is one of our only cost reduction cards in the deck. With dragon spells you cast costing 1 less to cast. Now, there is the Dragon Speaker Shaman, but that's a little bit out of budget for this deck. And we're also running Joda Archmage Eternal. With this, you only get to pay Wooburg, then pay the cost for spells you cast. So instead of paying the 7, you could just pay the Wooburg. Tiamat comes on the field. You pay Wooburg. Atarka comes on the field. Dragonlord Tyrant comes on the field. You name it, it's on the field. The only board wipe we're running in this deck is Crux of Fate to keep it in dragon theme. It's either destroy all dragon creatures or all non-dragon creatures. And the only planeswalker we're running in this deck is Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. The reason why I'm playing Vivian is I get to cast your dragons at flash speed. You know exactly how much I love flash in decks like these. And for the fact you get to look at the top 3 cards of your library, and you get to exile one, and you get to play it as long as it's a creature and as long as it remains face down with Vivian. Or you can also give one of your dragons vigilance until end of turn. Next, we're going over our ramp cards. So we're going to start off with the main 5 cards that I've already discussed in previous lengths in my Niv Mizzet Reborn deck. The crystals: Indathan Crystal, Ketria Crystal, Rogran Crystal, Savai Crystal, and Zagoth Crystal. Each one of them having the enemy color combination, and each one of them giving you the extra mana you need to pay for whatever you're playing, with the cycle ability attached to it. Then we're running Armillary Sphere, 2 and tap it to sacrifice it and search your library for up to 2 basic lands and put them into your hand and shuffle. Then we're running Circuitous Route, get to search your library for up to 2 basic lands and or gate cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Next, we're running Cultivate, which is a green staple, and I shouldn't need to explain why it's a green staple. Every deck who plays green runs this. Get to search your library for up to 2 basic lands, put one of them onto the battlefield tapped, and the other one into your hand and shuffle. Next, we're running Firemind's Vessel. It enters tapped for 4 mana, but you get to add 2 mana of different colors to your mana pool. Next, we're running Migration Path. You basically get to search for 2 basic lands and put them at the battlefield tapped and shuffle, with the cycle ability on top of it as well. And lastly, we're running Rampant Growth. Search your library for a basic, put it into the battlefield tapped. And the last section we're going to talk about is our land base. This is going to be the last little category that we're going to, and we're going to make it super, super simple. The first of which is the World Tree. Yes, we are playing the World Tree in this deck because not only does it give you a green, you also get to have the second ability. As long as you control 6 or more lands you control, you have tap to add 1 mana of any color, which is really good, despite the fact it is the most expensive card in our deck. With the secondary ability on it, or the last ability I should say on it, the one to sacrifice and search for any number of gods and put them onto the battlefield. The only god in this deck is Tiamat, and we don't need to search our library for it, so the latter ability is kind of useless. The secondary ability to have all your lands tapped for any mana of your choosing is very, very strong though. And we are also running 8 forests, 6 islands, 9 mountains, 5 plains, and 6 swamps. And that's how you build a 5-headed scary dragon god creature. General, whatever it is. And with our budget of $50 minus the $9 we're looking at with the basic land count that we're reducing from this deck, I should say, our total averages out to around $48.24. Now, at the time of recording, this is how much the deck is worth. Over time, it will fluctuate, especially when we know the actual price for Tiamat. But as it goes right now, this deck is under budget. Considering how much we have in this deck, like Sunbird's Invocation, like the World Tree, like Haunting Voyages, we have a lot of cards that are a little bit more pricey. However, this doesn't affect the budget too much, since this is still under $5 for each card as it stands right now. But that being said, we're still under budget, which is a really good thing, especially with a dragon that can tutor up 5 other dragons and put them into your hand. This is what exactly we need for this deck. And of course, this is with our $50 restriction. You're more than welcome to add more expensive cards to this deck, like Ramos, Dragon Engine. You're more than welcome to add Fairy's Protection, to add Demonic Tutor, and to add any other dragon you see fit into this. Even adding the Ur Dragon itself into the deck. These are all suggestions I would put to improve the deck. However, this is the build I'm putting for a $50 budget. And that's gonna do it for today's video. I wanna know from you guys, what did you think? Did I do Tiamat justice, or were there other cards that you think I should be adding into this deck? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you have found any enjoyment from this, I would like you to hit that like, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon to be notified of every single video that comes out, and please share this with your friends. Let them know what kind of decks, what kind of content I do, and let them know what kind of deck brews you can do with Tiamat and other fun little generals. I post every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every video has a premiere attached to it. So every 30 minutes beforehand, you will be notified when the video goes live, and you're more than welcome to join in the party on the live premieres and everything. Nonetheless, we have a premiere every Friday, so go check it out. And we have our socials, our Instagram, our Facebook, and our Twitter pages in the links down below, as well as the deck list in the link down below. Go follow them. I'm active on Facebook, I'm active on Instagram, I'm not as active on Twitter, I'm still looking to get more active on Twitter. That being said, we're very active on most social medias. I'd like to thank you all for watching up to this point. I do truly appreciate it, and we'll see what we have in store for next week. So until then, thank you, stay safe, and as always, cheers everybody.